We are back and ready to get into our match number one of the day, and it is going to be Bozzzton versus Zhym. Just to reiterate, both players are sitting at the bottom of their Division B. If we magically fast forwarded time and it was the end of Grandmasters, Bozzzton and Zhym would be relegated automatically with no chance beyond the matches that have already been played out to actually fight back. There is no last-minute bracket to stay alive, and it would just be automatic. So these players really need the win on the board. And here we go. Let's take a look at the bans here. I see Zhym banned out the Demon Hunter from Bozzzton, which does mean Bozzzton gets to play Warrior. And you know my opinion on this strategy, Sottle. It's bad.
Yeah, not really much to add to that. I pretty much agree with you. Warrior rocking an almost 80% win rate right now, and I kind of made the point sort of almost hysterically yesterday that that's an 80% win rate in the matchups where the opponent is choosing to allow you to play Warrior. So ideally, that should be the worst possible situation for Warrior to function in, and it's still holding down an 80% win rate. It seems absolutely absurd to leave this deck up right now. It's just so powerful in the hands of top-tier players. But we will see if Zhym can get the job done, because here's the really interesting thing for me about Zhym this week. He has relinquished his French citizenship this week, because he is not bringing Zhu to the tournament anymore. We have seen the French practice group alongside Gallon just consistently bringing Zhu over and over and over again, and that has been their strategy, and it's been working for every player except Zhym. So this week, it seems like Zhym has broken off and done something a little bit different, and he's come up with a very off-the-wall strategy, in my opinion, of potentially leaving Warrior up. So how that's going to work out for him remains to be seen. He does have that Spell Druid, which, as we pointed out in the intro, has a good win rate against Warrior somehow. That doesn't seem to make sense to me, but it does. That's the reality. But apart from that, we're not even seeing the Galakron Priest, which has been, I think, almost ever present in the lineups of the players who've been leaving up Warrior up until this point.
And honestly, I like 50% of Zhym's strategy in the fact that I don't like not banning Warrior. I think leaving it up is just always a mistake. But I do like mixing it up, even though, even if we can't go on French as well. Because the problem he's got is whenever everyone agrees on a strategy, say your practice partners, you play it and it's not working for you, you are losing. And then we are in a point where Bozzzton could almost expect Zhym to submit Zhu as one of his lists. And the problem is, if you expect your opponent to always play a deck that isn't Warrior or Demon Hunter, then as far as I'm concerned, you've got 3 out of their 4 decks already decided, which is not great when you know who you're playing on that weekend. So I don't mind the mixing it up. I don't mind the Druid, don't mind the Mage. It's a very different lineup from what we've seen going forward. It's just the Warrior ban scares me to death, so honestly. So we'll see if it pays off for him. But I do think Zhym, at the score he's at now, which is 0-2, he did need to do something different. Even if it's just for 1 week, mix it up, change it round, see if it has an effect. If it doesn't, back to the drawing board for next week. But since that includes not banning Warrior, I have to still feel a little bit bad about this plan.
Yeah, it's also a curiosity to me because, of course, we know that Gallon and RDU practiced together this week, and that was a byproduct of RDU playing against Tice. So RDU couldn't use his regular practice partner, so him and Gallon got together instead. Maybe that then trickles down to then break up that French practice group as well, because Gallon's preparing with something else, and maybe that is then what leads to this point of Zhym doing something a little bit different on his own.
Or maybe RDU had that plan, as he is also in Division B, to then subliminally suggest that Zhym not ban Warrior, just so Zhym loses, and it makes RDU score. Oh, I'm sorry, RDU, I've just revealed the plans. It's all coming together
Raven,
now.
This goes all the way to the top. Oh, my goodness.
Let's get into game number 1. Bozzzton on the top on this Hunter, and Zhym on his Mage on the bottom. And almost, I would say, just historically, from the beginning of Hearthstone, not the best matchup for the Mage here. Hunter seems to always be the deck or class that gets there versus almost any type of Mage.
Yeah, it has seemed that way. Particularly this build of the deck that doesn't really have any straight-up healing to speak of. There's Ice Barrier, but if that doesn't come down early enough, Hunter can end the game without ever interacting with Ice Barrier in a lot of situations, so that can be pretty difficult to save you. You generally need like the 1-2 punch of Ice Barrier and Alex Straza a lot of the time to make sure that that armor actually becomes active if you get it later in the game.
Well, if there's something we know about Mage, can go a little bit nuts. And Zhym is running a Kartuk defender, though, in his list. So there is some level of heal, if he can get there fast enough.
But again, that's a similar scenario, right? Where you can get so much damage through by turn 5 with Face Hunter that once the Kartuk defender comes down, you can just ignore it, not play any high attack minions because you don't really have that many, and then it takes Zhym like multiple turns just to activate the death rattles on that Kartuk defender anyway.
Also, funnily enough, a little bit different is Zhym is actually playing a copy of Conjurer's Calling in his list. Really a card that we've seen cut since Mountain Giant went away. It's just not having consistent targets in Reno Mage anymore. Zhym's choosing to rock it.
I think it's still good, and I think you should still generally run it because it makes all of your minions threatening. You know, when you play, for example, Malagos on turn 5 or turn 6 or somewhere around there, when you Reno their board away on turn 6, it really makes them have to respect that minion, and they have such high health totals that against aggro decks, they kind of have to make that decision of, am I going to remove this minion and just, you know, lose so much damage, or take the risk of getting punished by Conjurer's Calling. I think that's pretty important.
It's a nightmare for Zhym, honestly.
Job done.
Doomsayer Ping still takes 3 from the Sand Trooper. Still going to take 2 from the Lepanome. And the minions that live get to attack as well. It's so much damage. Is this as good a turn? So 2 options here for me. Is this as good a turn as any for a scrap shot? Because he has a beast in hand now? Or is there ever a reason for Bozzzton to just play the Lepanome and Hero Power? Just cash in the damage? So he would push what? 4, 5, 6, 8 damage this turn if he just played Lepanome Hero Power?
Right. He does also get the benefit of a scrap shot if he wants to go that way, though, just in terms of the huge minion next turn.
We can track in Lepanome Hero Power. I really want to as well. The options are there. Ooh.
Quickly.
Slowly adding up to lethal here.
Yeah, certainly is. It's got to be a consideration sometimes to take Arcane Shot over Kill Command if you're on a very fast clock, just because it's you know, more efficient damage technically. 2 damage for 1 is slightly more efficient than 5 for 3, even if it is activated. But since there's still multiple turns left in this, from Bozzzton's perspective, just taking the greater damage source does make sense there.
Yeah, and I do like this. Although he kind of threw away minions, he's not expecting to be able to get too many attacks off with these minions. And if you look now, he's cashed in some damage. His hand cost is quite expensive, but he has the next few turns locked up of just Face Stalker, Hero Power, Scrap Shot, or maybe even the other way around. But the fact that he can just basically do one strong thing every single turn in terms of generating just raw face damage, then I do really like just weaving in that Lepanome there.
Oh,
You just scrap shots, right? Scrap
Scrap
shot
shots for
coin hero power?
Scrap shot King Hero Power, yeah. So that puts his opponent to 12, and he has 2 activated kill commands and a hero power. That's still 2 more turns on the clock, though. I don't think he can accelerate his clock any faster than that, just looking at it on the surface.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me is this Phase Stalker, although we'll get buff from Scrap Shot, is unimportant in terms of its attack and health. It's more just a beast for proccing kill command, because you can't imagine with the very low minion focused start that Bozzzton has had, that Zhym doesn't have freeze, removal, just, you know, like for minions. So the Face Stalker realistically is not going to hit face, so it really is just an effect from kill command in which Bozzzton can save for later. I would like to see the coin hero power here, though.
Yeah, I think it's Scrap Shot Coin Hero Power, Scrap Shot Hero Power, and then potentially Phase Stalker Kill Command Hero Power. And then you have another Kill Command after that to back it all up. Makes sense? He's doing all the good things he needs to do, which is like beating the Alexstrasza clock here, for example. The big kicker is Zephyrus, though, and that's when maybe that second kill command that you're holding spare, plus the fact that you're putting a huge Phase Stalker into play on the turn where you are setting up your lethal for the following turn.
Yeah.
Means that if it's just Zephyrus for heal, well, you're leaving behind like a giant minion to contest.
It just kind of works, doesn't it, for Bozzzton with this opening? Or with his hand, should I say? Because, like I said, the face talk isn't necessarily booked in for hitting face this game.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that it's there is just a nice bonus, as you just pointed out, to just cover some of the bases here. Maligos missiles just cashing that 6 damage. You've got to respect that play. It's going to give him the healing touch. Most likely, 12 is probably close to the cutoff, though, isn't it?
Yep. Should still get it, I believe. Yep, there it is.
Bozzzton, unimpressed. So funny to me that so much of Face Hunter is just spell that just deals damage to face. Oh look, I drew another spell that just deals damage to face.
Yep.
Just looks funny. There's not quite a deck like. It's like if in Mage you just played Fireballs and Frostbolts. It's like so weird. I think it's still fine, honestly. I don't think it's worth diverting to the Face Stalker this turn. I think Scrapshot Hero Power is fine. He's facing down 5. You can get the secret active going forward as well. Next turn, if he wants to use the kill command then.
Yeah, that's the problem. He's still fine for his damage over time. It's just that he's going to start getting raced back very soon. Like, for example, see him out Wind Fury next turn.
He's going to divert a little bit here and get this secret up right now.
Yeah, and I think this is a pretty intelligent diversion because it cuts the Zephyrus out of the race immediately. It means that it doesn't get to deal its 3 damage, which could change the clock significantly and give Bozzzton the turns he needs to cast both kill commands, for example. Problem is he doesn't have an activator for those kill commands now if this Face Stalker goes down.
And if you're wondering what significant in terms of clock changes, literally 1 turn is all the time in the world, actually. Bozzzton does have plenty of beasts left. He is running the Stone to Spores, which means that the Scrap Shot still has a way to buff and generate extra damage. Backing into one now would actually be pretty sick. Oh, it's also pretty sick. The problem Bozzzton's got is if he scavenges into the last Phase Stalker is so much worse than if he does it to a Stone to Spore.
Right. If he does take it and he draws the boar, he'll have 4 mana left to go boar kill command, which is 9 damage, which puts his opponent to 5. The turn before Alexstrasza can come down.
Wouldn't you Scrap Shot?
No. Why? No. I don't think so. Okay, so look, if you get the boar, you go boar kill command this turn, and you do exactly 9, and then your opponent's at 5. So you literally just have kill command hero power. You don't have to interact with ice barrier or taunts or anything like that after that point.
Time moves quickly.
You go for the Sand Trooper instead.
Okay.
Just get some more, arguably guaranteed damage, because very similar to what you said, Sol, if now he can actually just go trade a Sand Trooper in, 3 damage. Kill command hero power. So it is the same description, and because there are minions on board for Zhym that Zhym won't realistically be able to get rid of, then it's a little bit. It is not guaranteed that you can trade it, because if there's a freeze, then he's in trouble.
Yes.
But still,
So
not a bad setup.
Right, this removes the outcome of he hits the Phase Stalker from the Scavenger's Ingenuity, which is the failure rate with my line. But the failure rate with this line, as you said, is the Frost Nova, just freeze it, or Ray of Frost, for example, freezing the Cobalt Sand Trooper. So you can run the numbers on which of those is the more likely outcome if you really want.
Now, that, to me, subtle. Unless this, oh, is he not going to play the tome? Oh! Zhym just going with the Ice Barrier to give himself a chance at surviving. Sets up lethal, but we can see the setup there was from Bozzzton all along. Double kill command to the face with the hero powers we mentioned earlier. Just ignores Ice Barrier as a secret, as it requires a minion or an attack to trade into face, not a spell. The Bozzzton does take the win, managed to hack through that healing touch even from the Zephyrus. And a pretty solid play there from Bozzzton. Just good, solid base hunter deconstruction play, right? Just how much damage do I need to get there? What's the most consistent way to get to this damage? And how can I reduce as many outs as possible from my opponent? Pretty nice play.
Yeah, and I'm honestly not 100% sure which of the two lines was better at the end, because as I said, they just play to different outs, or they play to different failure rates, I should say. So I think Bozzzton's line was very justifiable. Again, like, what are the chances of your opponent having a freeze and even feeling like they would have to freeze in that scenario to not be dead the next turn? Because you could also just have Frost Nova in your hand and not cast it that turn because it seems ridiculous to do so, right? So Bozzzton's play definitely made sense. It was a logical progression and it paid out for him. So yeah, well played.
Yep, pretty good game there for Bozzzton. It is only game number 1, though. We've got plenty more where that came from. We are just going to go to a quick break while we set up game number 2. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone. Welcome back. We continue our series between Bozzzton and Zhym. Bozzzton just coming off the back of a very quick and I think just well-played win there with that face hunter against Zhym's Mage. And I think a result you would expect if you asked to call it just on paper, but still very, very solid play overall. And now it's Zhym who is on the back foot. Just a reminder for anyone to be tuned in just a little bit late today. We did start earlier than normal in the old European time, so it's fair enough if you missed the start. But basically, both these players almost have to win to give themselves a much more significant chance at dodging the auto relegation. But this is the issue when you run into round robin. If you're both in a spot where you have to win, well, guess what? Only one of you can when you play each other. So we're going to see one player out of this match end the week in a very horrible place. One player still have a fighting chance.
Yeah, we see the same situation, I believe, in APAC, where Frosty and Dawn are currently 0-3, but because they're both 0-3, that means they haven't played each other. So that crunch match still has to come up, which can put everything on the line for both of those players, and that's what we have right here. It's a little bit less dire straits for these two players because they started this matchup at 0-2. But still, you do not want to be going down to 0-3 while your direct competitor at the bottom of the table with you then picks up that win and pulls up ahead of you.
Yeah, I wonder if it actually just gets to the point where you're not as bothered by that, and also just as much bothered by the players just above the cut. And you need them to lose to bring someone else down with to your level, I guess, to make it a real mixed bag. Because obviously, the more people that are in the mix for those lower points, then the higher sort of chances you have with these weird outcomes happening where you can actually just make it a little bit safe here. But getting back more into this match, Bozzzton has his Druid and, most importantly, his Warrior left up still to get a win with. Zhym has the full lineup of Demon Hunter, Druid, and Mage, and it is just a weird lineup. I think it might just be circumstance of the order we've cast matches in this weekend, but we've not seen a lineup like this, have we, with both Druid and Mage? It's normally, even this week, still feels like Rogue and X is the go-to choice outside of Demon Hunter and Warrior.
And we certainly haven't even seen a lineup like this on the other side, where there's Druid and Warrior after the ban phase. Is the remaining two decks for Bozzzton, because again, that Druid is a very rare bird indeed in the Europe region, at least. And scarily now for Zhym, Bozzzton is out to a lead in the series and still has that Warrior in his back pocket. I think we've seen to a person when players have been in that situation where it's like, okay, my Warrior has been left up. Well, they've just queued it first in the series and just picked up the win with it. That seemed to be the way it's gone over and over again. But this time, Bozzzton diverting and picking up the clean win with that Face Hunter here instead. So that means he's still got the Warrior in his back pocket.
Yeah, and I really do just think this matchup is not only just about the Warrior, of course, but just the Druids, right? Although I'm not the biggest fan of Spell Druid as just a deck over the past few weeks since it's been out, I do think there's a deck in there. I think there's something. I'm not sure what that something is, and maybe honestly, post nerf Sottle with the game potentially slowing down a little bit, we might even see a return of, say, Big Druid, right? With the bigger listen, but to me, that's a deck that could beat Priest, right? At least on paper, if you just start dropping like huge big minions, some of them untargetable, some awkward to deal with. That might be where we're at, and Druid does have the ability to ramp quite incredibly right now with the addition of Overgrowth in this expansion. So, I don't know. I think Druid has something to offer that's a bit more powerful than Spell Druid, and maybe a slight change in meta is what it needs to just give it that kick into top tier. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the patch that is coming, I believe tomorrow, is going to shake things up significantly. There's some big potential winners out of that. Druid might be one of them because it's not being touched and it's kind of on the fringes of the GM meta right now. Same thing for Priest as well, not being touched. A lot of the aggro decks that can blow past it are being adjusted. Hunter's getting weaker, which is a scary one for Priest to deal with, so maybe Priest ends up getting stronger as well. But I do like the point that Derek made early on APAC, where he said that you still have to be able to justify leaving up Warrior to bring Priest a lot of the time, because that's where people really feel that deck strength lies, in that it's one of the few counters, if you want to call it that, to Warrior in the metagame, and that still seems like a scary thing to do. So maybe a Priest lineup just still doesn't make sense because you don't want to counter Warrior, you want to ban it. But yeah, I think next week will be incredibly exciting as we see all of these nerfs start to take effect.
I like exciting Hearthstone. We're about to get into an exciting game here, though. It's going to be Zhym on this Mage once again, and Bozzzton is locking in the Warrior. I will say from Bozzzton, though, he is bringing what I'm going to call a bit of an older school list with the eggs and the Terran Gorfiend still in there. And I think most players have transitioned over into, at minimum, a Deathwing edition. The Grom is hyper standard right now, but I think Deathwing is becoming more and more accepted as just a good card, honestly. But the Bozzzton, they can be just the old school, the eggs and the Terran to get some work done.
I do particularly just love this inclusion of Grom, though, that's come out recently. It does allow just a different route through the game, which didn't really exist before. You know, there were draws where you just have Inner Rage Rampage early, and then you just play Corcoran on 4, and you'd essentially just be playing Hunter, right? You'd just be playing your biggest threat each turn and just hitting them in the face. But it was really rare. And now you have the opportunity to follow that up with just Grom as just a one-card huge charge minion at the end of the game. Those routes to victory do become a lot more realistic for this deck.
I will say, I have played a good chunk of Warrior with Grom in it, and there are very few and far between games where I've been upset at having Grom in my deck. A lot of it is like, oh, I could just throw Grom and win this game, or, oh, I have Grom, I can play in this way now. As you said, unlocking more ways to play more strategies. So, yeah, I do agree. I think it's fantastic inclusion. And I'm getting there on Deathwing. I think Deathwing is fantastic as well. We do see so far Bozzzton going for the aggro approach, which is often the my tool of choice here in this matchup, is to try and actually just put the Mage under a ton of pressure. One thing I do like to do here is with, say, Bomb Wranglers in a Rage, or even risky skip a Bomb Wrangler on 4, I feel is often very, very good versus Mage, because Mage just doesn't really deal with Bomb Wranglers that well. The fact that Bozzzton has access to 2 of them already this game bodes well, in my opinion.
These some garbage, Raven.
He could just wild growth to that Grom a bit quicker.
Might just be tree enforcements. Can manipulate health totals on the board. Play around Reno, Blizzard, all that kind of stuff.
I don't think he needs another 3-drop, does he? That's the problem, I think.
Yeah.
Still though, this is a lot of damage, and at the moment, Zhym has that Imprisoned Observer, but that's going to be a little bit late to the party. And if he chooses to drop down his Twilight, Bozzzton just gets a whole extra swing of all these minions. And with the Livewire Lance, this is just a ton of damage.
It's enormous damage, yeah. It's a shame there wasn't a nice, juicy 2-health minion on the board there for Zhym. I think, for example, if the 4-3 was a 4-2, then Coin Zephyrus might have offered Shadow Madness for the Bomb Wrangler to be able to make the trade, but without a good trade for it to make, I don't think that would be one of the offers from Zephyrus.
Ooh, he could buff. Can he put his board to 11? I think he can, right? Tree Enforcements and plays the Rush Lackey?
7, 9, 12, 14, 15. So then after the Twilight Drake takes 4 off, yeah. He's also looking at, like, buff the Bomb Wrangler and then rush the bomb that you're going to spawn to actually just try and deal with the Twilight Drake straight up, but that seems a little bit icky still.
I also don't like buffing the Bomb Wrangler because you then give it Pawn. I would rather have Reno, like, have to blast it a few times to create more bombs.
Sure.
Whereas now, the Twilight Drake can go into that and just put the Bomb Wrangler on 1 to generate a total of 2. Maybe it could have got 3, and although that doesn't sound like a big difference, 1 extra bomb can deal 4 damage. Like, that is maybe more with the attack. It's a lot of extra.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless he was going to go for the 11 health play, which I don't think is ideal, then it's probably fine to do it this way, just because the initial attack from the Twilight Drake just doesn't have a huge impact. So, against an unknown hand, they don't always have to have Reno, and this is better against a lot of other things as well. But there is an argument to say that Reno is the card you're potentially losing to here, so maybe that should be the one that's sharp in your focus.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, the idea of the health on something else was purely with the 11 health plan. Sounds like a terrible health plan, doesn't it? Do you want to go for the 11 health plan? Can you afford this? We'll see.
That sounds great. You're telling me you're going to turn my health plan up to 11? That sounds amazing. Please do that.
go. So he's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 health on board now. He's not going to go for the arena. He's going to go for the AoE clear instead. Oh! Got it right. Okay, yeah.
Hand just starting to run a little bit dry here for Bozzdton, and since he's played every minion so aggressively and it has now been cleared by the Zephyrus, that Battle Rage is starting to look stranded because Bozzdton here doesn't really want to waste damage swinging his weapon into minions to get himself injured.
I think he can always start with the weapon to face. I know he would like to draw with a Battle Rage, but he might actually just be pushing lethal very soon.
Yeah.
What now?
Okay, Draconic Lackey might just find him a passable play for this turn. Never mind.
Oh yeah, right wing, easy.
Brightwing into Millhouse Mana Storm. That's the line. Spend your mana this turn.
I think I might have liked Twin Tyrant there, even though it looks a little bit clunky with the double 8 drop then. But with Power of Creation, with Deep Freeze, Mage makes a lot of 2 minions, right? And having just a card that's going to deal a lot of damage to those 2 minions might have been a good backup plan.
Yeah.
Oh.
What is this hand?
Bad.
20, 29, 36, 39, 47, 57, 65 mana's worth of cards in his hand. Whoa.
So Bozzdton needs 6 damage here to actually just win the game. Oh!
That's a good start.
Oh! He can play that, he can Bloodsworn Mercenary, then he can play Lackey.
Yeah.
The extra waves of procking the bombs, that must just be lethal. I'm calling it. How many bombs go off? 3? 4? 5? Just saying numbers now.
5? Where's 5
Well,
coming
1 bomb
from?
goes off now.
Yeah. And 1 more spawns. Because he has to do it in this order to get the thing injured before he can Bloodsworn Mercenary it. And then 1 more goes off with the Bloodsworn Mercenary. I think you were overreacting ever so slightly. And 1 off. Inner Rage is lethal, just to do it on a bomb. Alright, close enough.
One is pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this is the issue now, where if Zhym kills any bombs, he is dead, unless he kills them with a minion. He can't target a bomb with this Arcane Breath.
Like, Frost Nova, but even then, he'd be dead to weapon. The chances that there's 0 Corsair Cash, 0 Grom, 0 Corcron, 0 weapon in hand for Bozzdton here, even if Zhym could freeze out the board, is just so low.
Yeah, I mean,
Bozzdton...
Yeah, Bozzdton didn't actually have or really use any of his burst cards in that game outside of 1 unbuffed Livewire Lance, right? So, as you said, the chances are so low. And shock horror, Warrior was left up and it decimated its opponent. I don't want to go too hard on it, but I feel like it happens every single series. I'm not even exaggerating. Warrior just wrecks everyone. It scares me, and now Zhym is 0-2 down. Bozzdton only has to win with this Druid, and he has 3 goes at it. So, you know, Bozzdton, at least with some of the crazy matchups he's been a part of in Grandmasters Round Robin so far, might be excited to maybe, just maybe, put one away as a smooth 3-0 and have his weekend done with.
Look, Zhym, I like you. You seem like a good kid. I'm happy for this new sponsorship you've got with Barcelona eSports. So I'm just going to say, friends do not let friends leave up Warrior, okay? Like, cut this out, all right? Next week, back to the drawing board. This is not a good idea.
Whichever friend told you you could leave up Warrior, cut them out of your life, because they are wrong. Let's go into game number 3. No messing about here. Bozzdton, of course, on his Druid and Zhym. Sticking to his guns on this Highlander Mage. Third time's the charm. That's what they say anyway.
And suddenly,
Boston's got a pretty good hand.
feels like I'm going back in time. This feels like one of our week 1 matchups, Raven, where I think Druid versus Mage was one of the most hotly contested matchups.
It really was, and a lot of discussion just around of how you can make Reno awkward as well. You know, with some of the health buffs, you can get mainly just that, just the Iron Bark, and then how many minions you put on the board. If you use any health buffs early on, but for now, Bozzzton just has ramp, 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 and a bit more ramp. This is what I'm talking about, sort of fast paced. I'm still holding out hope for just one day, an announcement to come out. We're making Speed Hearthstone an option here, cutting the clock in half. It turned. Oh, one.
Do you remember that?
Animation
was it
frozen would probably have to be a thing, but other than that, yes.
The Seat Story final, was it? Casey versus Ball Control. Oh, that was entertaining. It was just lightning round Hearthstone. It was so good.
It wasn't entertaining for me because I blinked and actually just missed the final. So
gotcha.
But yeah, it was pretty sweet. And there's even now the Mount Cellar there. Bozzzton. Oh. Look at that hand. Thought Bozzzton wasn't playing Zoo this series.
Wait, what?
Like gonna make it Zoo?
Oh, I see. He's gonna make a menagerie of animals. Yeah.
Wasn't one of my best, I'll give you that one. Does have a choice now though, because this Glowfly does open up a few different options. I do though, with Zhym having coin,
I supply only the
I think it's fair for Bozzzton to say, actually, this puts up a lot of health on the board in most circumstances. Just the fact that Mount Cellar alone has 8 health, this is just such so proof versus a Reno. I like going for this play. It does sacrifice the Ysera here with the discard, but I don't think that's the end of the world with how fast this game is going.
It's not. And of course, Bozzzton is still in a very, very strong position with how fast his start was. But that is the big value kicker in this deck. We've seen decks without that card included get starved out, get fatigued by aggro decks even in the APAC region. So it does suddenly become much more possible.
Snap pick, and interestingly enough, I think Bozzzton can get a fair read what that card is, because the pick was pretty quick. And if it was Nova, I think we would have seen it coined out this turn.
Very possibly, yes. Soul of the Forest now gives Bozzzton so many options. I think the secret is still unknown to him, but it is Flame Ward, so that is still an option he has to deal with. Of course, attacking into Flame Ward at all here, even if it does get him to push damage, will soften up his board state quite significantly for Reno the Relicologist to come down the turn after.
But he can Power of the Wild, attack in, and yes, some of his stuff dies, but then he could just overflow afterwards to heal it back up again.
That's a great point.
Oh! And plus, the first attack would only push, 3-4 damage. So yes, he heals his opponent, but it's not like he has to attack with his whole board.
Yeah, he actually could have gone, attacked first with the 3-2 to test. Since that would die to Flame Ward anyway, even after the Power of the Wild, and then readjusted. Yeah, and readjusted from there as to whether he wants to go Power of the Wild and heal afterwards.
Was this turn weird? Happened very quickly. I'm just wondering why Treant died.
Yeah, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I was still examining your line when Bozzzton played his, so I'm not entirely sure on the efficacy of what he did.
Yeah.
But it does seem a little bit janky.
Yeah, I saw a Treant die to Flame Ward, and I'm confused. Maybe that just had to happen. But yeah, well, that's one we'll have to go back and check on. Either way, Bozzzton,
well, I will say his board is still full, so there's probably no huge downside in the fact that a minion died, right?
True.
If he's still got some board space back from the Mount Cellar summon.
Yeah, I guess, saving a Crystal Power, is that good? Is that okay? You know, he did heal up his minion to make his Mount Cellar more sturdy, so I guess in the end you are right. does work out okay. It was mainly the fact that I didn't quite see the sequencing of what he did, because it happened pretty fast. I just wondered if there was a going on there.
Okay, having had some time to reconcile it, maybe the minutiae of what Bozzzton did might have been sloppy in places. Again, not sure. But I like the overall plan of what he's doing compared to what we were talking about. Because what Bozzzton's done is very specifically played around coin Malagos Flamestrike, right? Which, as you were saying last turn, he got a pretty good signal on because he didn't get Frost Nova'd on the previous turn. So there's a really good chance that it's Malagos Flamestrike coming out in the other way. So if that happens, he just has like lethal on board represented. So I actually like the way that he's done this overall.
Porcupine just deals 4 regardless. Bozzzton, look at what that means. The fist pump, ready to go. Takes the series 3-0, and what a relief that must be. As I said, Bozzzton has been involved in some of the craziest series we've cast over the past few weeks, with the likes of Cho, for example, being involved there. And some pretty stressful series for him as well. So I think not only just having the win, which is obviously huge, but just a straightforward boom, 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 3-0. The games, I definitely don't want to say played themselves, because I think Bozzzton played well, but they were fairly straightforward. There were no crazy circumstances. They weren't overly into like fatigue and crazy late games. They just worked for Bozzzton. So huge win for him there, 3-0. Unfortunately, though, you see Zhym obviously take the loss, and that puts him in some dire straits for his Division B position.
Yeah, and I'm very happy for Bozzzton. He's a player that I think is honestly placed pretty low on the totem pole in terms of people's opinions of European Grandmasters. I even raised this with him last year, because sometimes, when we had our player interviews, I would just ask deliberately mean questions to see if I could wind people up a little bit and see what happened. So, I asked Bozzzton that, like, probably in the eyes of most people, he's one of the weakest players in European Grandmasters when it's just stacked with all of these huge names and top players. Now, I personally have a huge amount of respect for Bozzzton because I've been with him at various tour stops. I know how many HCT points he's accumulated and so on. But there is this perception that perhaps he's not hanging with the big boys in this level of competition. And so I asked him about it, and he was very real. He said, like, honestly, he thinks that might be the attitude of some of the other players, even in Grandmasters, who maybe even look down on him a little bit. So I'm very happy for him. Obviously, he consolidated his position last year, which was great. And now, again, he's finally got that win on the board this year and can now use that as a platform to build on to, again, consolidate his position for an additional season.
Yeah, really happy to see Bozzzton take a win against Zhym. Unfortunately, he took a loss. It does not mean that he's just guaranteed out or anything like that, but it was just a loss he really, both players really needed this win, so unfortunately someone does have to lose. Take a look at the schedule for the rest of the day, as that was a very quick Series 1. It's almost like we're casting Asia Pacific region.
APAC speed!
Crazy. Let's go! We do have Tice versus Casey coming up for our match number 2 of the day. Another Division B match with a good amount on the line, as Casey does still need some more wins to feel a little bit safer. Then we have a Division A match with Huntrace versus Yala. Coming up a little bit later on. Maybe we get to see more of this rogue from Huntrace. And then Swids versus Ball Control and Cycle versus Silvername.
Yeah, and that win from Bozzzton actually puts additional pressure back on Casey, because Casey is currently sat at a 1-2 record, which Bozzzton has now just matched with that win that he picked up. So that means that Casey is now staring down at a point where he, starting the day in 6th, might be now down in 7th, where he's in that relegation spot alongside Zhym. So suddenly the pressure is back on Casey, depending on how those tiebreakers would play out. But it does mean that he now needs to keep winning. And as he said himself, he definitely felt that win yesterday took a